And isn't it true that Mr. Lemon met at a shopping center with the rioters who entered City's church in St. Paul, met with them prior to marching to the church?
Yes, he did. They had an operation called Operation Pullup. A lot more that will come out.
Will John Brennan be indicted?
What I will say today, I can't confirm nor deny whether there is a pending investigation, but what I will say is no one is above the law.
Mr. Chairman,
Weaponization has ended.
if we want to know whether Mr. Brennan will be indicted, you should just ask the president.
Madam Attorney General, you're not allowed to exercise your constitutional rights in a way that tramples on someone else's, are you?
No.
No, you can't do that. I mean, you have a right to petition the government under the First Amendment. That doesn't mean you can come into this room and start screaming at Mr. Raskin or me or anybody else and disrupt a congressional hearing. You have a right to protest on the street, but that doesn't give you a right to go into the Capitol and disrupt Congress. Something these guys talk about every day. You can't do that. So when Don Lemon said that he was exercising his First Amendment free press rights, freedom of the press rights, that's not really accurate because he was trampling on other individuals' rights. Is that true?
Chairman, we will always protect our churches and the freedom of religion. And yes, that's accurate.
First right mentioned under the First Amendment, freedom of religion. Freedom to practice your faith the way you think the good Lord wants you to, right?
That's right, under the federal government.
And isn't it true that Mr. Lemon met at a shopping center with the rioters who entered City's church in St. Paul, met with them prior to marching to the church?
He did meet, and this is a pending case right now, so I will only stick to what is in the four corners of the unsealed indictment, if I could, Chairman.
Yeah, I'm
There's a lot more that will come out. But under the four corners of the indictment, yes, he did. They had an operation called Operation Pullup. They said they were gearing for a resistance. They met in a parking lot and they caravanned to a church on a Sunday morning when people were worshiping together.
And Mr. Lemon said that he live streamed before entering the church with the rioters. Didn't he say we're going to head to the operation? Didn't he say this he said this on camera, is that right?
Yes, Chairman,
yeah.
And more.
That he was in Minnesota and that, as you said, they were gearing up for an operation. So again, you can't do that. This is why this is, I think, so important that this guy be held accountable, and I think why you guys have charged him and indicted him. Moving to the second subject here, will John Brennan be indicted? Mr. Brennan lied to the committee, which you're not supposed to do, last Congress, and we deposed him. He definitely, 18 U.S.C. 1001, we're all familiar with it. He lied to the committee, and the Congress, and I think the country would like to know if, in fact, he's going to be indicted for lying. And here's why it's so important. I'll give you a chance to respond. Here's why it's so important. It wasn't just that he lied to us, it's what he lied to us about. He lied to us about when all this weaponization against the President of the United States started. He lied to us about the dossier, and specifically what role the dossier played in the intelligence community assessment. Because we know back when President Trump was first elected, first term, this is when it all started, which led to the Mueller and to the impeachment and to the Jack Smith and all the stuff that's happened in the last decade. But it began here, and he lied to Congress about the role he played. And I just want to read a couple of things he said during that deposition before I give you a chance to respond. Mr. Brennan, when asked a question, said the CIA was not involved at all with the dossier. He said it was their purview, FBI's purview, and not ours. He also said the CIA was very much opposed to having any reference or inclusion of the Steele dossier in the intelligence community assessment. Well, that's interesting because declassified information that was declassified this past summer by the CIA says something entirely different. It says, Brennan, I want to put this one up if we have it. It says, Brennan ultimately formalized his position in writing, stating that, quote, this is released by the CIA Director Ratcliffe, my bottom line is that what I believe that information warrants inclusion in the report. He was further asked by an CIA official. The same officer said when he approached the director and asked that the director refused to remove it after being explained this wasn't good. With the dossier's many flaws, he said, yes, but doesn't it ring true? So this is John Brennan using that document to change intelligence community assessment, which I think led to all the stuff we've seen over the last decade. And I think this committee in the country, Congress in the country, like to know if Mr. Brennan is going to be indicted?
What I can confirm is that we have received a referral from you, Chairman Jordan, to investigate John Brennan. His attorneys have made some public statements, but the department is still bound, of course, by our longstanding policy of not discussing matters. What I will say today, I can't confirm nor deny whether there is a pending investigation, but what I will say is no one is above the law.
Mr. Chairman, point of order.
Weaponization has ended.
Yeah.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman from New York is recognized for a point of order.
If we want to know whether Mr. Brennan will be indicted, you should just ask the president.
Not a point of order, but I appreciate you trying to make it one. 31% of the American people, almost 1/3 of the American people, live in a city, county, or state where the left-wing leadership tells local law enforcement not to work with federal law enforcement. Now, what does that mean in practice? Let's look at Abraham Gonzalez, who on September 20th, 2023, was arrested by Border Patrol for illegally entering the United States. And of course, the Biden administration released him into the country. 5 months later, February 26, 2024, Mr. Gonzalez is charged with assault. 2 weeks later, March 11, 2024, he's charged with felony motor vehicle theft, stole a car. And on March 20th, 2024, 9 days later, he's arrested by the Denver police and placed in the Denver Justice Center. 6 days later, March 22nd, 2024, ICE sends a detainer notice to the Denver Justice Center saying this: if you're going to release Mr. Gonzalez, can you give us a heads up? Can you let us know maybe 48 hours before you're going to release this guy so we can come apprehend him there at the jail? And remember, a detainer is a final order of removal from a court where this individual's committed some removable offense. But on February 28th, 2025, Abraham Gonzalez is released to the streets. In fact, we can put that up. I think you can see this. Released, we got the form from the Denver Justice Center. What kind of inmate was Mr. Gonzalez for those 345 days that he was in the Denver Justice Center? We have that too. Violent to the staff, keep separate. So this guy was so bad, you had to keep him away from other inmates. He'd already assaulted some staff member, but Denver released this guy to the streets and instead of turning him over to ICE agents who would have come to the jail and arrested him there. And of course, we all know what happens. When the officers did apprehend Mr. Gonzalez out on the street, he assaulted one of the officers. This is what happens when you have a sanctuary jurisdiction. Right now in Minnesota, there are 1,360 detainer notices for violent offenders. Governor Walz and others have released 470 criminal illegal aliens back to the streets. In New York State, it's 7,000. Nationwide, it's over 17,000 that we know of. Where a detainer was filed, since President Trump's been in office, over 17,000 times a detainer was filed, and those individuals were released to the streets instead of turned over to federal law enforcement. 17,864 times. Illegals who've been charged with the crime have been released to the streets, and thereby jeopardizing the safety of the public, the safety of law enforcement, and of course the migrant themselves. And frankly, helping create the environment that results in the tragic deaths like we saw with Miss Good and Mr. Preddy. A few years ago, Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders said this in response to the State of the Union address. She said, "The divide in America today is normal versus crazy." And it's true, because it's crazy not to have a border, which is what we had under the previous administration. It's crazy to abolish ICE, and it's crazy to release bad guys who are here illegally to the streets when with one phone call, federal law enforcement will come to the jail and pick them up. The mindset that says it's okay to release these guys is the same left-wing mindset that thinks it's okay to weaponize government against your political opponents. And that is exactly what we had in the previous Justice Department. The Biden-Harris Department of Justice called parents domestic terrorists. The Biden-Harris Justice Department used FBI SWAT teams to arrest pro-life advocates. The Biden-Harris DOJ targeted traditional Catholics. The Biden-Harris DOJ pressured social media companies to censor Americans, and the Biden-Harris Justice Department launched not one, but 2 investigations into President Trump, spending over $35 million to try to bring down their political opponent. To further this effort, they sought the phone records of over a dozen Republican members of Congress. Even the Democrats said this was wrong. They got bank records for scores of White House officials. They even paid at least one confidential human source $20,000 for information on President Trump. And of course, while doing all this, they couldn't tell us who planted the pipe bombs, who leaked the Dobbs opinion, and who put cocaine in the White House. But thank goodness the American people saw through it all. Americans were tired of being targeted for their beliefs, tired of the lawfare, tired of the rampant crime throughout this country, and that's why they overwhelmingly elected President Trump. And what a difference a year makes. What a difference a year makes. Under Attorney General Bondi, the DOJ has returned to its core missions, upholding the rule of law, going after the bad guys, and keeping Americans safe. The Trump Justice Department has restored the rule of law. Murders are down nationwide by 20%. In D.C., violent crime is down by 28%. The federal surge in D.C. resulted in 8,000 arrests, the seizure of 800 illegal guns, and the recovery of 16 missing kids. The Trump Justice Department apprehended a suspect in the pipe bomb investigation, and they've arrested 6 of the FBI's top 10 most wanted fugitives in just 1 year. Of course, they arrested narco-terrorist Nicolas Maduro, and they seized a record number of drugs flowing into this country. Trump Justice Department put an end to targeting Americans for their beliefs. Attorney General Bondi rescinded Attorney General Garland's anti-parent memorandum. Department of Justice ended the practices of using the FACE Act to target pro-life Americans. They've refused to tolerate attacks on places of worship and investigations of traditional Catholics that we saw in the previous administration. On her first day, Attorney General Bondi disbanded the Foreign Influence Task Force that was pressuring social media companies to censor Americans. And the Trump Justice Department has ended lawfare. Under Attorney General Bondi, along with Director Patel, they've worked to expose the political nature of Arctic Frost and the Jack Smith investigations. They've turned over hundreds of pages of documents to Congress, and that's why we know, for example, that Mr. Smith paid at least $20,000 to some confidential human source. That's why we know that Jack Smith knew it was unconstitutional to seek to toll records from members. But since the litigation risk was low, and because members would never find out about the subpoena until years later, they charged ahead and violated the Constitution. The Trump Justice Department has changed DOJ policy to require prosecutors to tell judges if NDOs relate to members of the separate and equal branch of government, the Congress. And to top it all off, the Trump Justice Department opened an investigation into the conspiracy behind the Russia collusion hoax. The Justice Department has put common sense ahead of politics. They sued to keep boys out of girls' sports. They secured deals with universities to stop race-based admissions and anti-Semitic practices. And after discovering rampant fraud in Minnesota, the Justice Department, under the leadership of Attorney General Bondi, has established a new National Fraud Division. In fact, I met with Colin McDonald, who will head that division last week. I think he's going to do a great job. There's a lot of work to be done in that area, but I want to thank the Attorney General for her great work in the first year on the job, and I want to thank you for being here.